Hi, I'm Lara from 5 out of 4 Patterns and welcome to Sewing School. Today we're talking about a bicep adjustment. If you're anything like me and you have fuller biceps, many times our sleeves on our patterns don't quite fit. They're okay, especially if it's knit because they have some ease and some stretch, but they're just a little too tight. Well, today we're going to find out how to remedy that situation. So here we are with our pattern piece printed and fully assembled. And the first thing we're going to do is mark our seam allowance. You can see that I've done that in a few key points. You can go all the way down if you like and all the way around if that helps you. That's certainly, there's no problem with that. But I've just marked it in pink, number 1 in pink, in a few key points. That's the first thing we're going to do. The second thing we're going to do is measure not only our body, but the widest point of the pattern piece. So if we measure the widest point of the pattern piece, which would be here, which minus the seam allowance, so inside of the seam allowance. So from here where that seam allowance meets, here, you can see that in here. And we're going to measure that. And that, for this particular pattern, is 14.5 inches. That's the widest part of the bicep area on the pattern. The next thing we're going to do is measure our own body, or the body of the person who you are making the garment for. You're going to measure the fullest part of the bicep, and you're going to measure all the way around that, not too loose, not too tight, just right around that bicep. So for our purposes today, this measured 14.5, and the arm measurement we have for today is 16. So we have a bit of a difference. Now we don't want to add a lot of, for this pattern, we don't want to add a lot of room because the pattern itself doesn't need a really loose sleeve. We just want a little bit more room. So I'm going to add about, 3/4 of an inch or so. So as you can see, this particular sleeve is not a full long sleeve pattern piece. This is about an elbow length sleeve. So I'm going to be adding just a little bit at the bottom, just not a lot, just a little bit as well. If you're doing a full long sleeve, unless you absolutely need the extra room in the wrist area all the way down at the bottom, you're not going to make any changes to that wrist area. So you will tape the bottom as if this were a full sleeve. You're going to tape the bottom down. You're going to secure that here, and you're going to make your adjustments. Oops. And you're going to make your adjustments up here. You can see that. Okay. Now for this, I'm going to keep this open. Okay. Now, and you say, well, keep what open? We haven't drawn any lines. So here we go. We're going to draw line number 2. Our first lines were the seam allowance. Our line number 2 is a line, I've done it in blue, it's labeled number 2, straight down the middle of the pattern piece. Line number 3 is where these seam allowance markings intersect. That's the widest part of the pattern piece. We're going to do a straight line all the way across there. So we have 1 seam allowance, 2 down the center, 3 straight across the widest part of the pattern piece. Then we are going to cut number 2 all the way, not all the way through, but almost all the way through. So you can see we've got a hinge here. Once we've done that, we're going to cut line number 3 to here. So we have a hinge, and on this side to here. So we have a hinge. Now, as I said, we are going to be adding about 3/4 of an inch. You can add more if you'd like. This particular method, I wouldn't add much more than, more than an inch with this particular method. So the next thing we're going to do is spread our pattern piece apart. Now, we know we want to add 3 inches here. Now, just because we do it this way, see how that moves the bottom of this like a whole lot? That's not what we want, because then we have a sleeve that comes out like that. But we will adjust that. So let's start right here. We'll grab our tape. And at the widest part is where we want 3/4 of an inch or so. So we gotta have our tape measure. And let's start right at this top piece here. So we're at 1, that's about a 1/2 inch. That's about 3/4, okay? And you'll want to put a piece of paper under this. Right now I'm not, I'm just taping it directly to my table. All right, so we have that. Now, we know that we don't want to have this spread out too much. What I want to do here is snip this a little bit closer to the edge. You want a hinge, but you want it to be able to move freely. So maybe 1/4 of an inch from the edge without going through. Okay, that helps a ton. All right, so you're going to have an overlap of the pattern pieces. You see how this comes this way? Okay, you've given yourself more room, but you have this kind of overlap here, and that is totally okay. Now, we want to make sure we don't go any more. If you want to widen it down at the elbow or at the bottom where the sleeve is, you don't want to go more than 3/4 of an inch that we've done up here. We just want to make sure we stick with 3/4 of an inch up top. And you see how we can bring it, I can bring it all the way back in. If I don't need more room here, I can bring it all the way back in and touch it there. You see how it does? Or I can give myself a little more room. It's really up to you and your body and what you would like to do. Right now, I'm just going to give us, that's about 1/4 of an inch or so. And we're just going to tape it down. So we've done that. We've overlapped a little bit. Let's tape our pieces down. The next thing we're going to do is get this nice and secure. I'm going to tape over my little hinges here. We want to smooth out our hinge at the top too. You see how it's kind of bubbling there. So we'll just, I'll show you how we're going to work on that in a second. Okay, now the next thing we're going to do is grab some paper. Let me grab a piece of paper, a couple pieces of paper from over here. Some scrap pieces of paper. Now you're going to want to cover all this area that you taped. Let's get your piece of paper down there. All right, that's not perfect, but good enough. The final things that we'll need to do with our new adjusted pattern piece is just to even a few things out. So we've attached a new sheet of paper to cover this gap here, but we're going to attach another sheet of paper on the back. Now, what you'll find is that as you make this adjustment, many times you will have a bit of a dip here at the top center of the sleeve cap. And that is what we do not want. So the goal here is to smooth that out. Okay, so we're just taping another sheet of paper on here, and then we're going to get a marker or a pencil or a pen. And we're just going to smooth, because you can see there's a slight hump right here. I don't know if you can see that, just a slight hump. We want to even that out. So we're just going to go with the current, what we already have there. You know, we're tracing on the outside of that and just smoothing that out. Okay, and then we will just cut along there. Let me grab my scissors and I can show you what that's going to look like. It just smooths it out. You do not want to keep a dip in your pattern piece. Okay, so there's the top of our pattern piece. Now we'll also need to do this with the bottom as well. So here it may or may not be straight across, but we are going to double check that it is. And if it isn't, we're going to draw a straight line, because what you don't want, again, just like you don't want to dip at the top, you don't want it to come up at the bottom either in the center, because you've made those adjustments. It oopsies, it changes throughout the entire pattern piece. So all right, we've taped this down. We're going to take our straight edge and we're going to line up our corners here. And you'll be able to see what I'm talking about. If I could find my corner. There we go. Actually, let me do this the other way. Whoopsies, let me do this the other way. Here's a corner. And here's a corner. Okay. All right. So as you can see, it wasn't completely straight across. If you look here, you can see where the blue lines stop, where these blue lines stop. That's the gap that we had. So it's about, I don't know, 1/4 of an inch or so. And then we're going to cut, I've already lost my scissors. There we go. Then we're going to cut around this piece as well. cut right along that blue line. Oopsies. Didn't get all the paper under it. Let's start from the other side. I'm having all kinds of problems today. Can't even pick up the paper. You could also use a rotary cutter for this. That may make it a little bit faster and easier, because I'm just not having a great day. Whoopsies. My goodness gracious. There we go. All right, so now you can see, let me turn this around. You can see where that little hump was. So we smooth out the top of the cap sleeve, and we smooth out the bottom, straighten out the bottom of the sleeve as well. Well, that wasn't nearly as difficult as I thought it would be. I hope we see you next time. Bye-bye.